Okay, good evening. I want to call this meeting of the SEMRECC Board of Directors to order. First order of business is to recognize the various boards of selectmen who are here tonight. And if I could have the various boards stand and call their meetings to order, they're probably the best order of business there right now. So if I could have the town of Mansfield's already called their meeting to order, and I believe Norton has as well. So Foxboro, could you stand and just call your meeting to order, please, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, it doesn't matter who does it, or?
Doesn't matter.
All right, move to call the Foxboro meeting to order.
Second. Made second, all in favor?
And from Easton. Stand.
I move to start the meeting for the Board of Selectmen in Easton.
Second.
All in favor?
Right, thank you. All right, so thank you, everyone, for being here and joining us. The last time we were here in this room, I believe we actually formally started this organization known as SEMRECC. And I don't think we even had a name at that time. I think we were just the 4 towns forming ourselves into a group that we referred to as a regional dispatch committee. And at that point, we formally got together and then started working on a lot of details, put together an agreement, and all 4 boards voted to move this venture together unanimously, which is unprecedented in my history of working in government. So I want to thank all of you for being here and supporting our efforts for what we've put together up to this point. We've come a long way in the last time we've talked. We now have we have hired a formal executive director, Rob Verdone, who will make a formal presentation to all of you in just a few minutes about where we've come and what we've been working on for the past several months and actually years now. Actually, members of our committee have changed during that period of time, and I'm sure members of boards of selectmen have changed as well during that same period of time as well. So this will be an update for all of you, and it's informational primarily, just to bring you up to speed as to what we've done and where we've come so far in the last several months of our work agenda. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Rob Verdone. Rob Verdone is now our official executive director for SEMRECC. And he came to us from the city of Chelsea, was the deputy director of the 911 center there for the city of Chelsea for several years. And I have to tell you that we're all very, very pleased and enthusiastic about the work that he's done for us. I can tell you we would be half the place we were right now without his work and the things that he's accomplished for us. So we're very grateful for his work. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Rob.
Thank you, Mr. Keegan. Thank you, Board of Selectmen, for joining us. I'm going to try and keep this as brief as possible, but there's a tremendous amount of information that we have and like to share in a high-level kind of overview. So first things first, let's go back in time and kind of talk about the district and how we formed and the history thus far. Quick timeline. No timeline. Oh, boy. Here we go. Try again. All right. 2017, the district was formed under Mass General Law 6A. The district is a separate and formalized municipal body formed under 6A. In 2017, after an application to the State 911 Department, the district received a $1.5 million grant out of the surcharge money, and it's the first in the project's grant award. It's the first phase of that. In 11 of 2017, I came on board as the executive director. And about the same time, the district has identified a secondary candidate site for the public safety answering point, also known as a PSAP. And if I use that term, I apologize. I speak in 4-letter acronyms. But the PSAP of the 911 center, we found an additional really promising site that we commissioned an assessment of. Recently, we received back the report from that study. It said that this is not only a great facility, but it's highly advantageous to site the public safety answering point, the 911 center, at this facility. And the district board of directors has voted to designate that as the most advantageous and the most desirable spot to site the location. That's the district history in a nutshell. Our structure, we're formed under 6A, like I said. We're a public employer, body politic, and corporate. We're separate, but a team with the 4 towns, and we're governed by a board of directors. The board of directors is made up of the chief administrative officers from the 4 towns, so the town's town manager or a town administrator, respectively. We have several authorities under that law, some of which being up here: adopt a name and a seal, construct and site a 911 center, purchase land and buildings, employ an executive director, engage legal counsel, adopt a budget, enter into contracts. The general authorities found in most municipal bodies. There's many others, just administrative. Now to get into the meat and potatoes, why SEMRECC came into existence and why we're moving forward. I have a couple of short videos just to kind of, they better explain the whole national project for Next Generation 911 and what the future of 911 in the entire nation looks like. So I will play that.
Improved interoperability with first responder. For more than 4 decades, the public has turned to 911 for help during emergencies, and we've always been there. Basic 911 technology is essentially the same today as it was 40 years ago, but along the way, we've made some enhancements to the system to accommodate new technologies, like cell phones, location tracking, and now texting to 911. But that's getting harder to do. Technology is constantly evolving, now faster than ever before. And as the world adapts to keep up, it's our duty to keep up as well. Why? Because people expect 911 to work no matter what. They assume that they can reach 911 via text, picture, or video messaging, and they expect to get help quickly from any device at any time. It's time to make that concept a reality. Next Generation 911 transitions us from yesterday's technology to a faster, more flexible, resilient, and scalable system, enabling 911 to keep up in the future. So what is NG911? In short, it's an IP-based system that allows information to flow seamlessly across the 911 system, from the public to first responders and beyond. It's much more than just new computers. NG911 is an evolving system of hardware, software, standards, policies, and training that will eventually lead to safer, faster, and more informed responses. It provides improved interoperability with first responders, sharing life-saving information instantly. It's the most efficient backup plan to make sure all calls are answered when there's a call overload, power outage, or a natural disaster. It's better services to the public and more ways to access help through 911, such as text, video, automatic crash notification, and more. And emergency responders say it will provide the most accurate information about the situation, allowing them to not only save lives, but to do their jobs more effectively. Saving lives, gaining efficiencies, adapting to the future. That's what NG911 does. NG911 is fundamentally about sharing information with others. That can only happen with a plan. Formal transition plans address governance and standards development, update existing laws, standardize systems and training, and identify funding options. Many states have already developed plans and are adopting components of NG911. Working together, each state, region, county, and city has the power to determine how to make its transition to NG911. So what's your role? First responders, legislators, and 911 system employees will each play a role in making NG911 happen. Through collaboration and education, we can ensure this new system will best serve our communities. Learn more about how you can help by getting involved in the conversation about Next Generation 911 today.
All right, so that was a brief presentation that was developed by the Department of Transportation, the Federal Department of Transportation, explaining the 911, Next Gen 911 project. Many states across the United States are struggling to deploy Next Generation 911. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts just finished their rollout of the technology, NG911, so every public safety answering point 911 center in the Commonwealth has Next Generation technology in the actual 911 centers. Unfortunately, the staffing models and the way we do business over the past 50 years has not changed, so we're unable to use those capabilities to their full extent. So with NG911 comes texting to 911, which is not being accepted in the Commonwealth right now, but it's being tested. They're expecting to roll that out in the next year or so. With texting to 911 comes a whole host of different and new ways of taking 911 calls, and it really, really changes the way we do business. Just think about having a conversation with somebody on a phone versus someone via text message. It drags out the text message. It drags out the conversation a lot longer. Our ways of collecting that data, gleaning the information we need out of it, and digesting it, getting it to the first responders changes in a way that really we don't have a sound understanding of how that's going to change because it's new across the entire world. Pictures and video to 911 are coming soon after that, and that just adds another layer of how are we getting that information, who's digesting it, who's looking at it for response intelligence and getting it to the field responders, and how are we backhauling those pictures to the people in the field to actually get them the information they need in their hands. And the biggest and most prevalent and most discussed feature of next generation 911 is the ability to take wireless calls directly. Over the past 50 years, we went from calling a 7-digit phone number to 911 to enhanced 911, and all that really did was tack a super caller ID onto it with some geographical location. NG911 we're able to draw geofences and say, hey, I'm calling from my cell phone. Cell phones are 70% of the call volume now. I'm in Mansfield. I'm 10 feet within my cell phone's ping location and route it directly to the local PSAP. Unfortunately, we don't have the depth of staff right now to handle the 250% increase in call volume we expect with wireless direct. So I want to explain a little bit how a wireless call, a cell phone call works today. Today, if you have an emergency, be it a car fire, law enforcement, crime in progress, a medical emergency, you call 911. On your cell phone generally is how these things come into the 911 center, 70% of the time. We are able to geolocate you with the NG911. Unfortunately, the way the system is deployed now, it's going to the Mass State Police, or now the Mass State 911 departments taking over the wireless centers. The wireless centers were built in response to the inability to upgrade the E911 system to take these wireless calls direct, so they put a person in place of technology. So when you call 911, you talk to a person who asks you, they say, 911, where's your emergency? When you call 911, you call 911. You don't call a specific town. It's supposed to be an organic thing where you call 911, you get help agnostic to where you are. So that needs some human interaction. Somebody needs to ask you what your basic emergency is and where you are. And based on that information, they need to forward you to another PSAP, which is the local PSAP. This is the model we're in today. Again, once you get there, the conversation starts again. 911, where's your emergency? Usually these are cold transfers, or the telecommunicator taking the initial call will give a brief, but it still takes time to get through that. That demarks where the 911 kind of stops and where the 911 system takes over. So once that call gets into the local PSAP or the local 911 center where they're actually deploying assets, they need to diagnose and glean the information. They need to send the appropriate resources. So that takes a telecommunicator. And once they determine that they need a certain response, let's say in this case a fire truck, they'll dispatch that asset. They'll notify the responders, hey, you have an emergency, it's here, and get them going. In this area of the country, it's common practice, and it's just the way the system is built, that if, let's say, Mansfield has 3 calls before your 911 call comes in, they might not have a resource to send to you. That happens all the time, and there's a policy procedure built into that. What happens today is if Mansfield receives this call and they don't have assets available, they'll call their partners in the neighboring town. So let's say Foxboro. They'll say, hey, Foxboro, do you have, that resource is not available. Hey, Foxboro, do you have a fire truck available? Foxboro says, yeah, sure. They have to brief them. It's a 82-year-old male with chest pain at this location. This is their callback number. The backdoor code is 1234, and all this other stuff. So as long as Foxboro has a resource, and if Foxboro says no, then they got to start over with Norton. So there's a lot of time built into this, especially during our busy periods, and all the town's busy periods kind of line up. You get kind of a perfect storm of delaying a call. We'll get you help, but it's going to take a lot longer than it should. So after that all happens, the receiving agency, let's say Foxboro at this point, has to brief the responders, and they have to get on the road and drive to where you are. Now, the reason that wireless direct has such an increase in call volume is because with car fires, car accidents, fires, public incidents, more than one person calls 911. You don't have a roll call, say, hey, I'm calling 911, everyone else stand down. Everyone's calling. So you get inundated. Right now, we don't have the depth of staff to handle that. There's generally 2, maybe 1 person in a 911 center in these 4 towns right now. 2 calls, and we're TKO. So we don't have that depth of staff. And it's no fault of the telecommunicators or staff on there. It's just the way the model is it's outdated. and it just doesn't accommodate these kinds of responses. So let's fast forward, hopefully a year, to when SEMRECC's up and running. Same incident comes in, same caller, we geolocate their location. It falls within our boundaries, 911, where's your emergency? You're talking to the telecommunicator. My staff, who is taking the call directly, we cut out the middleman between state police or the wireless center. So they're able to do the same thing. They're able to diagnose, determine which resources are available. And let's say it's the same busy day, same time. Mansfield doesn't have an asset available. So that's Mansfield's truck. It's not available. They have 3 calls out already. At the rec, we're going to have 4 towns initially worth of fire trucks. So instead of calling someone, I say, on the telecommunicator, I can say, oh, well, I have Foxboro's trucks available. So these are out of service, and I just send it. It's done. So we just by regionalizing, sharing resources, getting everything in the same room, increasing our depth of staff, we're able to cut down minutes, truly minutes. And when I say minutes save lives, it's not hyperbole. It really means minutes save lives. And I'm not talking 1 or 2 minutes. This can really protract out. This is a better way of doing business, and this is one of the many benefits of regionalizing. And we can handle all those other people who like to call 911 and just, we're able to, right now, the state police or the wireless center plays goalkeeper. If everyone in this room calls 911, they'll screen it, they'll talk to you quickly. If you have new information, if they can get that out of you in the first few seconds, they'll pass it through. Other than that, they disconnect the call. Now, if the guy with the great haircut with the glasses on, if he has information that he wasn't able to explain right away, it's not making it all the way to the PSAP because it's getting disconnected. So all that stuff will come with it. But we have to prepare for that extra call volume. The next portion of does anyone have any questions about the wireless direct and the current model of 911? Awesome. So as technology evolves, and it evolves at its light speed now, first responders are finally getting up to speed. First responder technology, it's mission critical, it's life safety, life critical equipment. The Department of Homeland Security and fire and police departments across the country have really prioritized saying we need to get this data in our hands instead of getting it in a third party. So there's a tremendous amount of new technology being developed now. This is a brief video from DHS regarding that technology.
We respond to a lot of 911 calls every day, and things really need to work. There's a lot of running messages back and forth between the folks that are on scene command to kind of know what the various services are doing, what their status is. If we were able to, track that using some technology tools, those on-scene commanders would know what's going on inherently.
Safety is always a priority. We go into some of these high-rise buildings in the basements and we're investigating things which sometimes are the most dangerous places to be, and we don't have communication. That's a tough spot you're in.
The Next Generation First Responder APEX project is an effort where we're trying to bring together all of our research and development investments in order to assure that the future first responder is protected against all the hazards that they face during their job, that they're connected to their peers, to their commanders, and to the citizens that they need support through their radios, smartphones, other devices, including the future of public safety broadband, and they're fully aware that they have the information that they need to do their job.
Going through a building, being able to track where the firefighters are in the building. So if you do have a mayday, that we're able to respond to that and know pinpoint exactly where that firefighter is down.
Not only do I want to know where they are, I want the officers on the street to have the ability to have good situational awareness. My goal here is that the officer doesn't take eyes off what they're looking at. Could you get a heads-up display? Could you get something in that officer's line of vision that would continue to bring that information up as they go? In the best world, if I could put sensors on them, I would look at something that tells me about, obviously, the most common, the chem bio threats, the gas threats. I would be very interested in having some kind of sensor that allows us to identify explosive devices, or can do trace analysis in the air for suicide bombers or some of the stuff that our officers are more likely to face. If you don't know the 27 different talk groups and you don't know the 27 channels within those 27 different talk groups, it could be somewhat cumbersome if you're not really used to it. So a better way can be managed through our emergency communication center, that when we have an event go on, they know which things that they're going to patch through immediately.
When the boots hit the ground on the scene, if a police officer has a tactical picture of where an active shooter is, they'll know where to vector the response. If a firefighter knows what side of the house the fire is on, where the exposures are, they'll know where the engines and hoses. It's very important to be able to control an incident, not just respond to it.
Next Generation First Responder APEX project is about supporting the mission of the public safety community. This is their mission. Our job is to understand what they need and support them. We need your input, so we make sure we get that right.
S&T's role is really going to be to focus on how do these different components like wearables, computing, sensing, communications, visualization, how do they plug in and interact with one another? It'll allow for responders to be able to procure equipment that they know will work with the other pieces of equipment that they have.
Probably one of the most important things S&T is helping in here is creating solutions, not only that public safety can use, but with the leverage that the federal government has, creating solutions we can afford. The overarching goal for this program, and I think most folks would agree, is saving lives. How do we give responders the tools to save lives? And how do we keep responders safe doing it? And as a responder for many years, I don't think there's any better goal out there.
So this technology, every time we bolt on technology into public safety, it has to centralize and pivot against something, and that something is the Emergency Communications Center. We've stumbled recently for deploying new technology that's really affordable, and it's prevalent now because we have no place to centralize it in the 911 center. They're just overloaded as it is today. We can't bolt on any more to these guys. They're overloaded. It's saturated. This is going from sonography. We're taking sonograms that used to be massive machines. There's a department within the district who's deploying this in ambulances, handheld devices, to simple things like if we have an Amber Alert, if we have a small child who's missing, we have no way of getting those pictures to first responders. What happens is that the telecommunicator takes a picture with their phone and text messages it to the first responders. It's just not appropriate. It's inappropriate. There's no excuse for us not to be able to get that information out to first responders. The technology's there. It's becoming very affordable. It's becoming right off the shelf. We need to be prepared to be able to handle that data. We need to be able to push data to these first responders at the demand that they need. So some key results, what does this mean for us? There's going to be more data receiving capabilities for first responders. The iPhone was a huge step. We're looking light years ahead of that. There's going to be a lot more data back and forth between the 911 center and the first responders, and more life-saving data exchanged back and forth, like I said. And the big thing is it's going to be smoother and more efficient collaboration to get that life-saving information to the people who can actually save the lives. It's huge. And there's no reason that we should never be able to, we should never have a reason or have to explain why we couldn't get data that was readily apparent to first responders. And that's what we're facing right now. We just don't have a means to get it there. So we talked about NG911, which is how the public gets into the 911 center, talks to us. We talked about the data, the endpoints that the first responders are expected to use over the next few years. We need to kind of fill in the in-between. How is it getting there? What's the string between the cans? And that's FirstNet. So a quick video, last video I promise, about FirstNet. This presentation was not backhauled on FirstNet.
First responders are on the front line of our safety and security. Lives depend on their ability to communicate. FirstNet is developing a wireless network just for them to modernize their communications and keep them connected every day and during every emergency. FirstNet was born out of the 9/11 Commission recommendation to enhance communications used by fire, police, and EMS. This united the public safety community, which pushed for their own communications network. As a result of their advocacy, Congress created FirstNet as the focal point for the first nationwide public safety broadband network. The network will put advanced technologies, applications, and devices into the hands of first responders to help them save lives and protect communities.
FirstNet represents a way for us to exchange information in a way and a speed and with a reliability that we've never even had available to us before.
With a system that's being proposed like FirstNet, that's going to be huge in our ability to get that data back and forth without having to worry about the public's need for data exchange as well.
So we're looking forward to the day when public safety is able to do the work really unthrottled, no matter where we are on the network.
We've got to make sure that when that police officer, that first responder needs information, no matter where it is in your location, it's got to be available. It's got to be available right then. That's why FirstNet is so important.
We're excited about FirstNet because of the dedicated public safety spectrum that's going to be available to us in the event that something catastrophic happens.
FirstNet is led by a board of directors that understands and represents public safety and has expertise in technology and mobile networks. To design the network, FirstNet is taking a for public safety, by public safety approach, so that it provides responders with the coverage, capacity, security, interoperability, and quality of service they need to communicate and share information. Also, FirstNet is harnessing the power of the private sector to build and operate the network. This business model will deliver technology and innovation over the network for years to come, with no additional funding needed for deployment and operation.
If you think about what FirstNet is, it's the first project of this magnitude and of this capability nationwide for our country. So this is a very important infrastructure project for public safety. I think people were insightful enough to see that this needed to be a public-private partnership, because you needed to bring technology and innovation that is inherent in the private sector, along with getting the needs of public safety built into that planning.
Is we have a paramedic, police officer, and fire chief sitting on the board of directors. Here is a place where you can reach out and touch people that understand your industry, care about your industry, and we're building the network for you.
We are going to be advocates and pushing innovation and technology for years to come on behalf of public safety so that they get the best advantages of technology as it evolves. That's what FirstNet's goal and objectives are, is to be able to get the tools and the technology to the people, even in the most remote areas.
Success is delivering to public safety the capability they need to save lives, theirs and the public.
So FirstNet is the pipe between, or the string between the cans. A year ago, I probably would have told you FirstNet it's coming, but it's going to take a while. I just got a FirstNet device in the mail a week ago. It's working great. FirstNet's managed by AT&T. Verizon has spooled up their public safety products as well, so the pipes are there. They're growing. We got to stay ahead of it, or else we're going to find ourselves in the dust. But so what this device brings, and it's really just this is a cell phone on the FirstNet network. But let's say there's a major incident like the Boston Marathon bombing. People, as soon as something happens, people are taking pictures, they're text messaging, they're saturating the network. I'm okay. What happens is we start pushing the first responders off the cell networks, and we can't operate. So what this does is FirstNet prioritizes and preempts all other commercial traffic, so that there's never a time if they have servers that a first responder can't get data, can't get a phone call or a text message through. The other thing it does is it gets data into the field. So as like a firefighter extricating a patient out of a car, a hybrid car that has extremely high voltage lines going through it, you can pull up your guide to kind of cut that car apart. Hazmat incidents where you can pull up the emergency response guide and say, hey, this is ethyl methyl bad stuff, and it's creating a green plume. Okay, yeah, it's bad. They can look up the pre-planned guides to mitigate those incidents. But the core of it is that none of this happens unless we can get it centralized somewhere, and that's where the REC comes in. They're talking to someone, and it's us, and this is going to play again. All right, here we go. So we sit in the middle, FirstNet and Next Generation 911 to either side, the public talking to the 911 center, and FirstNet with the next generation devices in the hands of responders. So that means we have to, this is the model we're building off of, this is our foundation, and this is what's coming to the Regional 911 Center from a technology and operations perspective. So just some few things we've done over the past 6 months. As the next gen 911 system is rolled out, it's got capabilities that have never been explored before. So this is something we just finished up a couple weeks ago, where we assigned a geographical location to every pole at Gillette Stadium. So if someone's in one of those giant parking lots and they call 911 from their cell phone, a lot of times we have really hard time, or the telecommunications Foxboro have a tough time saying, all right, what parking lot are you in? And they can't articulate that well. So now if you call 911 in Foxboro's parking lot, you'll grab the nearest pole and it'll pop up in the telecommunicator saying, hey, you're in front of pole 1, 2, 3, 4, and it'll map. So now we've addressed poles. This is something we've never been able to do before. We're doing the same thing with colleges. There's 2 major colleges in the district. As it stands today, those colleges may not have street addresses for the individual buildings. We're working with the state and the town to make that happen. That was something that Wheaton College, that Easton's led. I'm sorry, Stonehill College in Easton. We're looking to do the same thing with Wheaton. We're taking data that's been in existence for years, like mile markers on a highway, and we're building that data right into the computer-aided dispatch software, so that when you call 911, the telecommunicator can associate you with a mile marker on the highway and better vector in first responders, which doesn't exist today. The mile markers are there. The system has the capability of doing it. It just needs to be integrated. And that's getting done. And we're deploying several apps on the FIRST network. We're using it. We're prototyping an application tomorrow and throughout the week at a concert. We're excited to see how that performs. We're really excited to see it. I think it's going to work really well. So these are just some of the projects we've worked on. We've partnered with Waze. Waze has millions of customers that feed traffic data back and forth. So with this is a dashboard I built that says, hey, a telecommunicator can say, all right, Mansfield is transporting a patient to MGH Boston. Click on a button on the screen that says Mansfield to MGH Boston and see where the traffic is, see how long it's going to take to get there. We've monitored traffic coming in and out of the Xfinity Center during concerts. Same thing with Gillette Stadium. So just tools that Waze says that people report car accidents 6 minutes earlier on Waze than they do call 911. So leveraging all the information available. This is something we did for the town of Foxboro, where they said, hey, where are our fire calls? So we threw it on a heat map. You can buy software for $10,000 to do this. We did this as part of the Regional 911 District because we have the tools and the expertise to get this data out. I know that I'm now going to get 3 more requests from 3 other towns to get the same data. And this is another project we're working on. The Regional 911 Center will be the Bristol County Fire Control, which coordinates all the mutual aid for the entire Bristol County. Right now, they have no way other than calling each other to say, hey, what's your availability for an engine? I have a fire. We're building a dashboard that will update live to say, Mansfield is TKO. They can't provide any mutual aid resources because their ladder truck's out of service or something like that. Or, Raynham's, another community, and have quick access to see what the status of the entire county is and streamline operations that way. And then, like I said, we're deploying apps and testing out stuff with the FirstNet network. Recently, we were awarded and recognized as an ambassador from the National Weather Service as a weather-ready nation, which just means we are champions of weather safety information. And like the town of Mansfield is also a storm-ready community, which lowers your insurance rates and flood insurance rates. So the REC has also positioned ourselves to continue that legacy in that program. And the National Weather Service has endorsed us as an ambassador. All right, so let's get into the meat and potatoes. The budget, the money stuff. Does anyone have any questions about the technology before I jump into the budget stuff? Awesome. All right.
I just have one.
Sure.
Foxboro is the only town that's not in Bristol County.
Okay.
And it's going to be Bristol County control. Will all the Norfolk County apparatus be available for Foxboro to see, because we really don't use Norton and Easton?
Right. So the dashboard is built with the district in mind and the neighboring towns that we cross boundaries all the time between Bristol and Norfolk and Plymouth. My vision and my hopes is that we build 3 identical systems that are cross-connected and updated the same way. So hopefully the REC will kind of be pervasive and leach out to the other counties. So yeah, I think that would be a huge collaboration between the county control of Norfolk and Plymouth.
Does anyone remember NF 911?
Say again?
Anyone remember Enhanced 911?
Right, this is just the next step. This is the enhancement to Enhanced 911. This is the next generation, not to be coy, but this is the next step, the improvement of Enhanced 911.
Yep, because I've been looking at some articles from the past that Buck has been doing it back in 91, and Norton too back in 95.
Right.
Yep.
Yep. So this is just the next step. Sir?
The first Bill coming from Mansfield. The first net special, is that a band within 4G LTE, or is that a separate band that you are creating on top of it?
It's both. So it's not a band within a 4G LTE. It's leveraging the current commercial 4G LTE system with preemption and prioritization on that network. So a device designated as a FirstNet device has priority and preemption over a commercial customer. The next phase of that that's being rolled out now is a separate section of spectrum called Band 14, which is dedicated exclusively for 4G and 5G coverage on the FirstNet devices. So when that's rolled out throughout the Commonwealth, which is in the contract, my device will try and look for a Band 14 exclusive carrier for the phone, and if it can't, it'll go back to the commercial and have priority and preemption to keep that the top level access.
It doesn't need any additional equipment, it's going to use equipment that's already in place.
No, that is all. So with FirstNet, the way this works is that you buy the phone, you subscribe just like you would at home. The first responder agency says, all right, AT&T manages FirstNet, and Verizon has a similar product. Says, hey, I want a FirstNet device. This phone is free. They give us this, and then it's a monthly fee, just like a normal cell phone. So this replaces your cell phone plus all those added features at a reduced cost. Yep. Awesome. So grants. This has been spoken about a ton. Each 911 center currently is eligible for a grant through the state, or several grants through the state 911 department. Collectively, the four towns are getting about $190,000 a year. It's about equal. There's a little bit of disparity between the towns, but it's really marginal. So every year, the towns, or a PSAP is eligible for a support and incentive grant. So as individual towns, it's $190K. The second we take our first 911 call, we are eligible for an annual grant, same pot of money, but because we're a regional center, that number from 190 turns into 890. It's a tremendous amount of money. It's a tremendous increase. It's almost a town and a half worth of what we're looking to assess the towns. And that's coming from the state 911 department in perpetuity. It doesn't go away. It's not competitive. And it's looking like it'll probably increase over the years. So what that looks like over 10 years is that 890 is the top line. So after 10 years, we're looking at getting in, and that grant, $8 million. Our losses, if we don't take that grant money, and if the towns continue to operate like we do, that would represent approximately a $7 million loss in grant opportunities. And we would collect as a town over 10 years, or four towns over 10 years, just under $2 million. So that represents $7 million in grants abandoned over 10 years if the regional center was not established. And this money it's taken from the surcharges on phone lines. There's zero tax dollars involved. That's all service charges. It's money up for grabs for these regional 911 centers. It can't be, or 911 centers in general. It can't be used for anything else. If it's not used here, it's going to be used elsewhere. So it just makes sense to go after this money. And this is in combination with the training grants that are in perpetuity that we're expecting every year, the emergency medical dispatch grants that we're expecting in perpetuity every year, plus the $10 to $12 million we're expecting for the development grant, which is the competitive grant we're working under now. So there's a lot of free money, for lack of a better terms, available for these programs because it is such a tremendous asset to the public safety and life-saving efforts of the towns. Any questions about the grant? Mr. Parker.
Sorry. I know in fiscal year 2019, the money that wasn't covered by the grant was $204,000, I believe.
Correct.
Do you know what won't be covered next year? And seeing as 2019, really you're the only person that's employed or covered by that grant.
Right.
And what's not covered by the grant?
So this year we had a modest budget, and it's outside of the development grant. That is to fund insurance for the district, legal services for the district, and just the normal operating cost of being a public entity. it is all broken down. It was provided to all four boards of selectmen, and it's I can make it available on the website of how I justified that money and our budget. But we're really conscientious about the way we spend money and what we spend money on. There's really no frills. There is no frills. There's zero frills involved in that budget. And I know you've seen it, Mr. Parker, but I'd be more than happy to break that down for anyone who's curious about it.
Is there any projection on what it'll cost for 2020?
Yes, I'll get into that right now. So, rewind a little bit, Mr. Parker. Sorry to kind of not answer your question directly, but this is about what we're spending each year by town on 911 services. So I took the published town report numbers, I reduced them, and then I added 30% for stuff that's not captured in that number for benefits. And 30% for benefits is a really, really conservative number. So I got these numbers. So in reality, each town's paying probably over $1 million easily. So when we get to the grant, I'm building my budget and my operational model off each town being assessed about $550,000 to $580,000. So I put the bigger number up there just to be not to surprise anyone. But so there's a tremendous savings just in annual operating costs, and this is non-grant reimbursable money. So this is after the grants are in place, about $580 per year per town. If we had more towns, there's a bunch of towns that are actually waiting in the wings to come in. We don't have to, every time we add a town, we don't have to duplicate our staff. We can use the staff that's in place, and that number will be further diluted. So that's roundabout. Does that answer your question, Mr. Parker?
Yes, thank you.
Awesome. So that's our projection for assessments from the towns. And then the last thing is the building, and I'm actually going to switch over to PowerPoint for that one. Any other questions about financing?
Talk about that in the discussion.
The finances of the building? I didn't put it in there, but I could certainly do that. Sure.
The boards of selectmen were presented this before we took a vote. There was a list by town of what the cost would be. Where does that stand today versus where? So the original SEMRECC was going to be at West Street.
Correct.
Now it looks like it's going to High Rock. Where do these towns stand as far as what the people were told were going to be costs to run that facility versus what they're going to be?
Sure. So
I'm getting questions from our constituents on that.
And that's a very fair question. So the costs are not going to increase. It's the same 580. That's the cost of the town. End of story. There's no other cost.
What about the cost of build-outs?
That's all grant funded.
Every dime?
Every dime is grant funded. Or grant eligible. The grant covers it.
What guarantee do we have we're going to get it?
The state's made commitments to us. We have it written that they're committed to the project. And
I think what's fair to respond to that is that they've already committed $1.5 million to us, and they're well on their way to committing the rest of the money to us because they see this. I can tell you personally that, in meeting with the 911 staff, that they view this as being one of the rising star operations in the entire state, and that they see this because of how well it's rolling out, how well it's being managed, and how well it's being dealt with in terms of the day-to-day operations and the foreseeable future in terms of looking at the technology use and things of that nature. So I can tell you that the conversations I've had with the state 911 director is that they're fully committed to this project.
If anybody's going to have any more questions, can you come up here and use the microphone? People at home can't hear the questions that are being asked from the audience. Awesome. Thank you.
Sorry about that. So to speak about a 911 center and the PSAP, as I like to probably refer to it a couple times, if you think about public safety in general, firefighters have their tools: fire gear, Halligans, axes, fire trucks. Police officers have weapons belts, bulletproof armor, handcuffs, patrol cars. The building is the 911 telecommunicators tool. That combined with the technology in there, that is the heart and soul. We can't answer 911 calls if we don't have a 911 phone in the center. So it needs to operate 24/7, 100%. It needs to be resilient. It needs to be hardened. It needs to be built right. I speak with the police chiefs and fire chiefs all the time, and I use a term called how many nines reliability is something. And if you think about it, something that's 99% reliable, if you expand that over a year, that means that you're anticipating 24 hours of downtime. We want 99.999, 5 nines reliability, which gets down to minutes of expected downtime. So we need to build it right. That comes with a lot of planning and some money. This is going to be the center point for all technology that we just spoke about throughout the district. So these are some of the core kind of values of a 911 facility. NFPA 1221 is a standard by NFPA that dictates what a communication center should have and how resilient it is. It needs to be resilient to floods, fire, storms, attacks, redundant power, connectivity to different towns, meeting office space, training facility, and it needs to be comfortable and really nice to work for the staff. These guys are under tremendous stress at all times, and we need to have a really nice place for them to work. Right now, each one of them is in a 10-plus-year-old facility that was built for 1 or 2 people, with no training facility, bathrooms that are right next to the dispatch desks, and we need to do better for the people that are truly doing the work of the public. Our initial, really the only building available was 50 West Street. It's the current Mansfield Police Station. Great building, beautiful spot. It would have been a fantastic 911 center, but we found another spot that just made a lot more sense. So some core kind of vital statistics about this facility is it's owned by the town of Mansfield, and that would continue. Right now, it's occupied by the Mansfield Police Station, Mansfield Police Department, which is an issue when you're trying to build a multi-million-dollar 911 center. It's a type 2 and 4 building, which means it's built out of bricks and heavy timber. It's 150 feet above sea level, and it's got approximately 115-foot light-duty radio tower. It's close to meeting NFPA standards, but we can't quite get it there. We can't do stuff like put photovoltaic cells or solar panels on the roof to offset our costs. It has higher energy costs just for the sheer fact that we weren't planning on replacing buildings, doing insulation, and bringing the building up to an energy standard that would truly correlate into saving money. And there's a higher construction risk because our assessment can only get as far as being non-destructive and seeing how the building is now without busting open the walls. This facility, to update, would involve reinforcing it for seismic resilience, which is required by code, which means we have to pull apart walls and put beams in, and it goes above my head for engineering, but there's some risk in there that we can't really foresee until we actually get into it, which is acceptable. It's just something that if we can avoid, it'd be a lot better. The other thing is that due to the requirements of this building to get it up to code, we have less money to put into the communications center portion of it. So this is kind of a scaled down, scrubbed up map of what the center would have been. So essentially we would take the center portion of the building, build it to exactly what we need now space-wise, and if we ever took on another town, we'd have to essentially tear it apart and rebuild it. So that turns into a lot of money and time, complicates operations if we ever took on a new town, and people, the other towns are really waiting in the wings to get into the center because of our reputation thus far. Enter High Rock. It's a facility. It's in the town of Foxboro. It's a former AT&T long line site. It was built and commissioned by the AT&T Corp in partnership with the Department of Defense. It was built Cold War era, so these tower sites were built across the entire country to transport long-distance telephone, TV, the two most important things in America, and then DoD communications, which was an afterthought. But they were built so that if a nuclear bomb was detonated during the Cold War era, that these facilities would stay operational. So we continue to have those Department of Defense communications. This facility is rated for 2 psi overpressure, which is a nuclear detonation between us and Boston, essentially. It's built to standards that we couldn't afford to even touch today. It's got 18-foot, 10,000 psi concrete walls that are reinforced. This is a center that, like, if I was to pie in the sky say, hey, design a 911 center, it'd be like this building. And it happens to be in our district, and it happens to be up for grabs, if you will. The other thing is it's got a 206-foot super heavy-duty microwave tower, and it happens to be the highest point in the district. All these things really lend themselves to being a phenomenal candidate site for a 911 center. So these are some of the good shots of it. So some vital statistics for this facility. It would be owned by the 911 district. It's currently unoccupied. It's been cleaned out. It's been abated of most of the asbestos and those kinds of things that you found in the 60s and 70s. It's a type 1 building, which means it's fire resistant. There was a fire in the facility. Somebody lit, the American Tower Corporation was using it as record storage. Somebody lit those records on fire. It put itself out, and the fire department knew about it a couple days later. The concrete didn't even sprawl in the building. It's unbelievable. It's 412 feet above sea level, and it's got that 200-foot heavy-duty microwave tower. We can very easily put, and we're anticipating put solar panels on the facility to offset our energy cost and to be a little greener. And every window we put in the facility is going to be brand new. Every ounce of insulation that's going to be in the building is going to be new because we're going to put it there. We're planning, the plan for that building, if we go there, is to wrap it in a insulating shield to kind of hide all the graffiti that's on it and insulate the building. Plus that 18 inches of concrete does a really good job, I guess, too. Right now, the building is and we meet NFPA standards today without doing a thing to it. It's bulletproof, it's fire resistant, it just meets those standards without even breaking a sweat. And it's big. We're actually, the initial kind of overview and thought was that we'd take down a portion of the building that we didn't need to not heat and modernize it and increase our permeable surfaces in the area. So we're planning on mothballing a section of it and dedicating it for expansion. So instead of tearing out what we built and rebuilding it, we'd be able to build, knock down a wall, and continue operations with our new partners. So this is kind of an overview of the facility. Oh boy. So it's a big open facility. There's columns in it, but other than that, it's empty. It's the concrete looks like it was poured yesterday. This section of the building, my mouse isn't working over here, but the section that looks like an L is the portion of the building that we'd probably look to take down, open up that for windows, and make it a little more comfortable for the people working in it. And this is illustrative of just the height difference between the two facilities. So that's the Mansfield facility. It sits about 150 feet above sea level, and it's got a 115-foot tower. The basement of the High Rock facility is about 200 feet above the tip of the antenna tower at Mansfield. So add 200 feet, we're at 612 feet. There's nothing really around us that's higher than that. That tower is built to handle those big microwave horns that are about the size of Toyota Tundras. So the technology that replaced that's about this big. So we're not really concerned about overloading the tower. We'd be hard-pressed to overload that tower. So it's a tremendous tool. That lends itself to microwave deployment and radio deployment, which decreases our costs and increases our return on investment. This is the map on the left is a coverage map, including the 4 towns and different radio transmitter sites within the town. The blue kind of coloring in the middle is the Mansfield coverage. The big green blob up top is the High Rock site, and it actually extends beyond the Easton site in the bottom right-hand corner. It's overlapped by the Easton site, so you can see it. It's incredible. To the right is just a theoretical microwave path analysis. On the bottom, you can see the elevation. So at the far left is where High Rock is, and the far right is all the way down to the coast in Bristol County. So not much in between here and the coast. So that lends itself to getting radio signals propagated to where we need them to go. And this is another theoretical kind of tool to see where you could put different radio and microwave equipment. The left is the High Rock facility. The green is a good candidate site for placing microwave equipment, which needs direct line of sight. The right is the Mansfield facility, which doesn't really get out of the 4 towns. It would be, we'd have to hop different places and add different layers to make that facility work. It could work, it's just High Rock is a lot more organic in the way it deploys its radio systems. The other big thing that was a concern for us is that this is the High Rock floodplain map. It's not in a floodplain. It's too high. There's no bodies of water above it. If it rains, it all goes away. The issue with the Mansfield facility is it's right behind a dam, and it's in the lowest part of the district. It's in a floodplain, which increases our cost to be in that building because we're required to have flood insurance. Plus, even though that the floodplain, the way that the inundation maps show, it'd be safe to have a 911 center there. It's just another thing that, do we really want to have that looming over us at all? Plus the $17,000 a year to have $500,000 in floodplain insurance. It wouldn't necessarily disqualify the facility. It's just we have another site that's not an issue at all. So why not go with the other site for even just this concern? And this is just a quick parcel map of High Rock. And this is a concern that's been raised, is contiguous to the F. Gilbert Hill State Forest. It's private property right now. It would be district property as soon as if we make that deal. It's approximately 6 acres cut into the state forest property. The Warner Trail kind of goes around it. It doesn't interfere, and we're not looking to exclude people from using that area of the park. We'd make it, with security and resiliency in mind, we'd make it the land that we're not using as available as possible, and being good stewards to the forest and our neighbors. And this is a picture of this facility today. It is a nuisance. People break bottles, they blow stuff up, they graffiti. It's a modern urban art experience. The tower is in pristine condition. The facility itself is in pristine condition other than the graffiti. It's got parking facilities, it's got room to develop and grow, and it just really checks a lot of our boxes. There were very few negatives, and we did a full analysis. And are we doing on time?
About 2 minutes left.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions on this before I get into the...
Oh my gosh, look at that. Look at that. Radio. Satellites.
Go ahead, Mr. Parker.
I know, I talked to you. Hi. Is that already on? You can just use the microphone. I know I asked you before, where it's in the middle of the state forest, it has one access road in, which is the High Rock Road. There's only one access for the power. Where it's in a highly sensitive area is the septic system, meets state, local standards, is the drinking water, meets state and local standards. What about an environmental impact study with all the vehicles going up there, the streams that go across the road, all the wetlands that are on both sides of the road, and all those things? I know I've brought that all up to you before. It's just things that I think everybody else needs to know about, because it sits in the middle of the state forest. The building may be great, the location is terrible.
So as we've discussed before, the facility itself is nowhere near any, I forgot what they're called, the pools that are protected, any vernal pools?
Vernal pools.
Vernal pools, it's well outside of that, any offsets. We don't even come close to any standards. From what I'm told, I'm not an expert in this, but we had an engineer study done. Any thresholds that would compel us to do a really deep dive on our environmental impact studies. All the underground tanks have been removed in compliance with the various state laws. Any septic system or sewage, water system would have to be in compliance with modern today standards. Plus, we have a duty to have not only in compliance, but exceed it to make sure that we're resilient and have clean drinking water at all times, and that we can, use the restroom facilities no matter what the weather or the geopolitical climate or anything that's happening in the rest of the world. We need to be operational. So those things will always be there. When we install backup generators, which are required for any PSAP, we're going to have redundant, paralleled backup generators that we can almost generate all of our utilities on site if we have to. And that is extremely desirable for a regional, or a PSAP 911 center in general. Plus, we're adding things like solar panels. We're looking at rainwater collection devices and other things like that. The facility and the road that you speak of, the state just did a tree clearing operation that required an extensive environmental impact study for that, which kind of did a lot of the work and answered a lot of questions that you had regarding vernal pools and streams and wetlands, and none of that was applicable for the tree clearing operation that overtook more than 50 acres of the forest as a forest health project. So we were concerned about that when we went into this. We examined it, and we found that the site is highly advantageous nonetheless. We don't feel like we'd be an impact. We feel like we'd improve the area and be excellent stewards to the forest and the area. Right now, it's a building that just collects graffiti and nuisance. So, any other questions regarding the facility?
I want to thank Rob for his very in-depth presentation. It was very, very helpful. I have to apologize to you first. I didn't introduce myself or the members of the board. So I'm Bill Keegan, Town Manager in Foxboro and Chairman of the SEMRECC Board. To my left is Mike Units, Town Manager in Norton. Across the table from me is Kevin Dumas, Town Manager in Mansfield. I think you probably know that. And Connor Reed is the Town Administrator in Easton. And the four of us have been working with Rob over the past several months to come up with this update and this presentation for tonight. The information that you're seeing tonight, I think, is pretty compelling in many ways as to why this is so important for us to do this. The technology that you're seeing that was discussed earlier tonight is actually rolling out as we speak. And what's happening is that there are a lot of communities out there who are not ahead of this curve. In fact, they're way behind this curve. I'd like to say that this group is actually pretty far on the front edge of that curve, which is good news for all of us in terms of how we were able to get the information out to our residents and to protect our residents at the highest level of public safety. So I want to say to all of you, we really appreciate all of your support, your efforts to help us put this program together and to serve your collective communities with this kind of new technology and new project. So we're certainly happy to answer any questions you might have at this time. Jim.
Jim DeVellis, one of the Foxboro Selectmen. Thank you for your presentation. 2 questions. To get from today to put a shovel in the ground, what's the process with respect to SEMRECC, the 4 towns, the selectmen, town meeting maybe, budgets? What's that process?
So being a district, we wouldn't have to get involved with going back to the boards of selectmen or town meeting for moving forward the project. That could be determined at the district board of directors level, which is a perk of being a district and kind of lends itself to efficiency that way. As far as getting a shovel in the ground for High Rock or Mansfield, leaning more towards High Rock. For that project, let's speak to that because I think Mansfield's a little more clear cut. We need to purchase the property, and by purchase I mean it's a nominal fee. We're not expecting to spend over, let's say, $100. It's really small. So we need to close on that deal, which our attorneys and the American Tower attorneys have come to terms and have agreed on terms. We just need to vote as a district to accept those and move forward with that. We have the $1.5 million still in the coffers for design and getting that rolling, so we just have to kind of reprogram it from Mansfield to, we haven't spent any of that, so just kicking the architects off in the right direction, saying, all right, this is our building, let's go. And they're anticipating that as soon as we get the green light that we're rolling. And we're going to time that around different, like both buildings need a roof. We said that it'd be most cost effective to move that off to September because of all the school projects and to remain competitive in the bidding climate. So that's really it. We just need to say go. And that is a vote away. We've met that milestone where we said, all right, this building is good. Our attorneys have come to terms. Now the district needs to take an action and say, all right, we're going here or we're going to stay in Mansfield.
Okay. And so when you're saying we, you're meaning SEMRECC and the board that
Correct.
you're running? Okay. So the second follow-up, and thank you for putting, I guess you call it a feasibility study on your website. So I did look at that, and as Mr. Aptowitz had said, we're getting questions as selectmen from the constituents. So going through that report, 530 pages, basically 3 things on it. One was the Mansfield site, and the majority of that was redacted.
Right. Well, that was redacted by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And just to comment on that.
I'm not challenging. I'm just saying that's fine.
The stuff that was redacted out of that was security sensitive information, like the type of pipes we're using and where the fire suppression system terminates and how the electrical comes into the building, just to protect that against any sabotage.
So, and I appreciate that. The second part was, a big chunk of it was the Foxboro site. Tremendous amount of soil borings and air testing quality, but more of the brick and mortar. And then the third part was a recommendation, evaluation of the 2 sites. When I look for a feasibility study, the stuff that you said here tonight, why do we need it? Our technology versus the technology needed today and maybe the technology needed in the future, combined with the financial from all different towns collaborated together, was completely non-existent. This information that you have here, are you planning on putting this on one report? And if you want to call it a feasibility report or a preliminary report, so we have something to look at. I've been to this presentation before, but there's a tremendous amount of gaps unless you go to all your meetings. But I wouldn't say that was a feasibility study. It was more of, here's 2 sites.
Yeah, that was that report was towards the building because that was what was questioned. There's a tremendous amount of data regarding operations and personnel that we could put together a brief similar to this, maybe boil this down and refine it and put it on our website.
For the selectmen, and I'm not disagreeing with the information in it, but if we could have one document that we can hang our hats on that says, yes, we're moving forward to support it without having to try to find it in different places.
Okay, that's easy.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Anyone else?
One more thing to follow up on, Mr. DeVellis. Just so you know, for 3 years, I've been trying to get a copy of a feasibility study. I've asked the state, I've asked all 4 towns, I've asked SEMRECC for a feasibility study. And Mansfield Police Chief Sellon said at a public meeting he gave a copy to all town managers, and he'd get me a copy. Mr. Keegan, you said you'd give me a copy. It's been 3 years. I still don't have a copy of a feasibility study. Yet I go online for the town of Hamilton, who wants to do a regional dispatch center for Hamilton, Manchester by the Sea, and Danvers. They have a 124-page feasibility study that's on their website that maybe everybody should look at. It goes through all the aspects of what they went through before they even thought of moving forward on a project like this. And it's very frustrating because it's been 3 years. I've filled out numerous freedom of information requests, and no one's been able to provide it. So in support of Mr. DeVellis, where it's now may be great, but how it got to this point is very questionable.
Sure. So to respond to that, Mr. Parker has requested several times from various different agencies a tremendous amount of information which was provided to him. To speak to the feasibility study, which I was not involved with, I wasn't on board, I was still in my former job at the time that study was commissioned and finished. The feasibility study was commissioned with a company. They got 95% of the way there. They developed a draft feasibility study report, and then they went on out of business. The study was never finalized in the report form. All the data was collected, and the commission at the time said, why are we going to spend our money again to recommission this? We have all the information. They verified it internally, developed a PowerPoint, and presented it to the board. Additionally, they commissioned a building study, which was not included and was not finished by that company, which was included in Mr. DeVellis's package, which we expanded on with the other building, plus a radio feasibility study to take those two aspects that were out of the scope of knowledge and expertise of the police and fire chiefs that were on that committee and button that all together and say, all right, this is a good project. All that data was provided to Mr. Parker, including the draft reports numerous times. And to say that we didn't provide that data, I think is, I don't think it's quite accurate. There's no finalized report that says this is a finalized feasibility report. That, I think, really was the presentation and the collective of saying, hey, we verified this data. The PowerPoint was pretty extensive in its information that it provided to the towns. And, I mean, this is a pretty cursory overview of the whole project, but the data is there to support this whole project. And we've gone to a point where this makes more sense than ever before. So to rewind and go back in the Wayback Machine 3 years and say, question it, I feel you and I hear you. We provided all the data to try and verify that and make you feel comfortable, but we're moving forward and it's pretty clear why.
I think it's fair to say that this was not a traditional study in that regard. So in short, as Rob was able to point out, the information that we were able to provide was voluminous. And so there was no shortage of information provided to Mr. Parker at any time. We gave him everything we had. The issue that we've come, the conclusion that we all reached was this really made the most sense to do. And one of the things that wasn't touched upon, but I think is really important to summarize and put a bow around this entire project is that all the technology, all the information that you see that's coming forward in terms of how we're going to provide emergency communications into the future is all happening right as we speak. The problem with if we stayed separate, we already made the decision to go forward, so we are already collectively together. But if we had stayed separately on our own, we would have had to pay for that independently on our own for the upgrades of that information and the technology just to provide it. And I dare say we probably would have had to provide more personnel to do it in the process. So what you're seeing right now is the cost as the costs are today. But the costs of what it would have been are even higher than the savings we're able to generate with the report that Rob just gave you. So I think that the opportunity cost is much higher than that of what the actual numbers are. So I'm really quite pleased with where we've come. I think it's a really important step forward for all four communities. Rob has put together a really well done website that he'll leave for you before I leave tonight, and that it's really important that people have questions on that. We will provide that information to them on the website as our means of information dispersion. But I also think it's important too that for the town of Foxboro, this is being televised tonight. We're taking a copy of this. We're going to bring it back and provide it for our citizens as well, and for any other communities, Norton and Easton, we certainly want to provide it to you as well, so that you can all provide it for your residents to see. Because this information is extremely important so that you all understand that this is a very, very good project. Any other questions before we wrap things up? Yes.
Hi, I'm Dottie Fulgenetti, Chair of the Eastern Board of Selectmen, and there were only 2 of us of our 5-member board that were on board with this when it started. So I just want to say that, you know, it was really cutting edge at the time. Nobody else was doing it. It was a big risk for us to take a vote like that, and I feel even more confident tonight. The technology that we're looking at tonight is far superior than we were even talking about a year ago. So I think that you're doing a great job. I think you've made an excellent hire in the executive director, and it makes me feel confident in the vote that I took a year ago that we're going in the right direction. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else?
I'm Bob Kimball from Newarton. The thing that I love about this is the cost factors. And being on the other end of the sewer pipe, which we are, in Tri-Town, it works. And we've proven that it can work and will work. Saving money is what it's all about, and that's what all of us are trying to do, I think, as in these small towns. And as we get into this, I know I'm getting way ahead of myself, but as we get into this, the technology that you're going to have to work with, that should branch out to all of these 4 departments where we have the same equipment. Right. We have the same type of technology that every department, no matter where you go or what you're going to do, you can run to the back of a vehicle, no matter where it came from, pick up the information, and use the same type of equipment, know how to use it, and we can buy it together and save additional money on top of it. So I think this is just the beginning of a real good possibility of what can happen. But at the same time, to your point, the building itself, we had to build that today. I can't imagine what it would cost to build it. And as the old cliche goes, build it and they will come.
Yeah.
I think you will see other communities look at what we're doing and say, we want to be a part of that too, and hopefully our costs will go down because of it. But you guys are doing a great job. I love the new concept, the new idea, the new plant, I think is the best place to put it. It's somewhat isolated, I get it. You don't have to worry about neighbors. It doesn't appear you have to worry about too many neighbors, which is always a plus, because we all know when we try to do something in somebody's backyard, it becomes a problem. So I think overall this is the best solution, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how much we can do and how much we can save.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I think you raise a very important point, which all of us talk about on a regular basis, is the regionalization of services. And we already have a successful model in the MFN, and actually Easton's joining part of that as well. So it's all 4 communities that are involved in that. But there are multiple opportunities that we talk about all the time about regionalization. Dispatch is just another one, but you know, you talk about the way we can purchase equipment together. I know the fire chiefs and police chiefs talk about all the time with their staffs, and the lieutenants and the deputy chiefs talk about how they can share services. That's the reality of today, and that's going to be the reality of tomorrow. I think that the more we're able to do that collectively and work on these things collectively, we're going to be much more successful overall. I want to thank you all very much. Kevin?
Just one other point, Bill, that I wanted to make sure we reference for everybody. I really appreciate the fact that all of our police and fire personnel from our 4 respective municipalities, especially, you know, over the past 6-7 months, have been coming to all of our meetings, have been participating, and it's nice to be able to see all of them cooperating and working together for the best interest and believing in SEMRECC and looking at what we're able to do here. And I just wanted to make sure that we recognized all of their help throughout this process as well.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. That's a great point. And I absolutely agree that this has been a cooperation. It's about best example of cooperation I've seen in any project that I've worked on. So I want to thank you all very much for your attention tonight. We appreciate your involvement in this project, and have a great night.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.